Anda kembali bersama kami dalam segmen khusus Teknologi Spesial dan kami masih berdiskusi secara eksklusif langsung dari studio CNBC Indonesia bersama dengan founder and investor of Bhumi Varta Technology, Martyn Terpilowski. So back again and let's continue our discussion. So we already talked about the products, we already talked about the opportunity. So now, what do you have in mind when we talk about that jump into the blue ocean? You see that there's nobody there, and what is the difficulties, what is the challenges, and how to stress to the people that they're gonna need your products?
I mean, you've got to start using the examples of America. As I said, there's 75 companies doing what we do, including billion-dollar companies. You've got to sit down with them and explain to them. There's a lot of education. We spend a lot of time educating, and the reason like it's not really a VC-orientated thing, it's more private investor thing like we are. Basically, it takes 8 months for a deal. It's that kind of thing. You've really got to educate the people. Yeah. Then the PIC changes.
Talk again and again.
But it becomes easier once you've got use cases. Yeah. The use cases were the struggle. But now we've got GGGY is still the biggest coffee shop in Indonesia by number of outlets. Obviously, XXI is the biggest cinema. Astra's probably the biggest corporation. Yeah. And we've got foreign companies like Kraft Heinz and BAT. Obviously, the National Land Agency, so BPN. Yeah. You couldn't really get a better endorsement when you're doing this kind of software. So it gets easier. But yeah, of course, my thought's pretty different to everybody else. Everybody else jumps, the VC guys. My background is different. So they look at red ocean and because they know there's a market there. Yeah. They know the market's there and they want to beat everybody else.
The money's there.
But the problem with me is with that, to me, it's the race to the bottom, and I think that's the issue. You've got to offer incentives to everyone to win the market, right? Yeah. Whereas I don't have to do that. I have to educate people, but I can make a profit within 3 or 4 years. Whereas I'm not saying the revenue is going to be as high, but I can make a profit within 3 or 4 years at significant revenue. So I looked at it totally differently probably than a venture capitalist would. I looked at it from somebody who was working more in the listed securities business, somebody who understands the IPO market and cannot IPO loss-making companies, or they're going to tank, right? It's just going to tank. So I think it was 2 things. It was like, this business is blue ocean. If I can get this right, I can get there. And also I've got very good supporters, actually. I mean, they're not published, but they are, well, some of them are, but they are, mainly hedge fund managers and stuff who are investing their own money in BVT because they believe in the long-term story. And they're people, some of them used to work with me for 15 years. So we've got a great deal of trust and they let me get on with it. So it was like kind of from left field, but I just analysed the market, and at the end of the day, this will follow America, I believe. Yeah. And I do believe that this will become a huge business. It's become big in India now. It's become big. It's becoming bigger and bigger in China. It's becoming big.
It's just the beginning.
The problem is here, if people don't have their own funding, it's impossible because no one's going to give them money for it. So we have our own money, and otherwise, unless you're going to, it's very hard because we're talking to acquire some companies now who are really good guys but they can only do project by project. Yeah. They can't build a mainframe. They can't spend $10-20 million, right? So that's the challenge. But for us, it's also great because it's a massive barrier to entry. Yeah. It's a huge barrier to entry. So we're working with various parts of Telcom Group and stuff.
You already got the big fish.
It is, yeah. So it's a barrier to entry because it's not a business that people. So there's negatives and positives, but overall, I think if you've got a 5 to 6 year outlook, it's very positive.
Okay, so as you said earlier that the investors is very crucial in this business, especially in the early stage. So so far, who are the investors behind?
Yeah, so it's a very different model. I'm actually the investor originally.
Okay.
So I don't get salary. So it's a different model than the startup model completely. Yeah. This is my baby. The other investors there's 3 family offices who are personal friends, and the rest of them are capital markets guys. Very wealthy capital markets guys, like the guys who run the biggest hedge funds in Asia. They're personal friends, and so it's a totally different model. We've got access to capital if we need it, but our ability, we've always got to look towards profit, right? So it's not the usual names, completely different, because they're not interested in this kind of business, really, because they think it takes too long, and I'm not really interested in their model either because I don't get it. Because I used to work in a business where it's hard to understand that because listed equity market, you need EBITDA, right? So it's hard for me to understand. So it's a totally different group of people. It's their personal money, but also what we have. A lot of them are fund managers, but because it's private, it's personal money. But what we have obviously is the ability. If we ever go to IPO, which is our plan, we have the huge connections in that market. I mean, between our partners, we know every institution, not in Indonesia necessarily, but Singapore, Tokyo, Hong Kong, we know, even US, we know a lot of that kind of people. So it's very different than the normal startup, and it's much deeper technology. But yeah, the way we do it, I like it better because we're always investing money, but we're always making up the revenues coming up at the same time. And there's never going to be this burn rate of $2 million a month or anything like that. It's not possible. And I don't want it because I've been saying for 3 years, I don't think it's sustainable. You know?
Okay, wow, that's impressive actually. So talking about the challenges that you faced by BVT, so after the pandemic, we also we heard about the economic slowdown globally. So how this will affect to the BVT performance?
I think it's the other way with us. COVID was quite frustrating because we're not a cloud kitchen or something. A lot of these guys did really well during COVID, right? I think all the e-commerce did really well during COVID. For us, it was a nightmare, right? But now COVID's ended. For me, it's okay because we're not relying on fundraising all the time.
Okay.
So it's a big. I'm happy the COVID's finished, and I don't have this funding winter issue because I'm not relying on somebody else coming in financially. I have talked to some big people, but it's more a case of we can decide.
Okay.
We're not. So it doesn't really affect us. This new, but of course, it's going to make it harder to get the clients, like the startup clients, because they're a lot more careful with the money now. So all these companies that have been spawned in the last few years, which are restaurants, coffee shops, claiming to be technology companies, those guys are slowing down their budget now, right? So that's a problem. But I think now most of our core clients are the big boys, the Astros of this world, the government. They still need geospatial technology, and now they've seen the benefits. They really like it, and they see what the benefits are. You talk to FIF, they really understand what we're doing. They referred us to HSO, and now we're growing like that. Now we're talking to Astra Integrasi. So for us, no real problem. It doesn't really affect us on a day-to-day basis. I'm still hiring people. In fact, it might be better for me, so the startups backed by VC stop stealing my staff on much higher salary than I can pay. So that might be the
Okay, so the performance at the moment is still great.
It's good. I mean, I'd want things to happen quicker. I mean, our business it's a slow burner. I mean, I started off with a software as a service model. I sign up XXI and Genji Jiwa very quickly, very, very quickly. But then, it's a slow burner. You're not going to get a deal with a startup, with a conglomerate like Astra, without a hell of a lot of work. And also, they do due diligence because they want to know, right? We're putting infrastructure in to run your software.
Okay.
If you're not here in 2 years, there's nobody to take you over because you're the only guys. So there's that challenge as well. But I mean, it's growing. I mean, as I said, there'll be at least 2 big companies to announce soon. It's getting better.
Okay, so as you say that this is the only beginning, this is the start, that it's going to be huge in the future. So how do you see this technology in the future, and how about the plan for BVT itself? Are you going to IPO on this year or maybe next year?
No, I mean, the IPO, I mean, I'm running again, back to what I used to do, what I used to be involved with. I won't be doing any IPO until our figures look very good. Because I plan to get proper sponsors in, not sell it to retail. So to get proper sponsors in, like institutional investors, not necessarily an Indonesian institutional investors. I mean, if you want to bring in the big boys from Japan and people, and that's where I have a lot of contacts, you've got to have a positive. You can't just list technical listing. They're not interested. They love Indonesia as a country. A lot of the guys I know, they think that obviously the growth story is huge, but they're not convinced by a lot of the IPOs here because they know it's retail driven. And retail-driven IPOs often go down quite quickly, like the SPAC market, right? Because there isn't underpinned by a major institutional investor, like someone like Ontario Teachers Pension Fund, $220 billion fund. They underwrite a lot of IPOs in Japan and places, right? They put huge money into these things, right? Which means that you're not having massive sell-off of drivers and things, right? So I will be doing it once my balance sheet allows me to do it. I would say quite possibly 2 to 3 years in very good numbers. But I'm more realistic, I'm not playing the valuation game. My partners are calm guys with lots of money. It's a very, very different game.
Okay, so we're going to see in 2024 or maybe 2025.
Unfortunately, I'm behind time because of COVID. COVID's not made life very easy.
Yes, of course. But so thank you so much for the discussion today. It's very this is very interesting. So good luck to you and Bhumi Varta Technology. Good luck for the next endeavor. So thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.